The line is famous for its spooky stories as it runs through some of the oldest and most crowded areas of London, and its tunnels are linked to all sorts of eerie history. They cut through ancient plague pits, medieval burial sites, and locations where significant industrial accidents happened during the Victorian era. As you would expect with such a rich and haunting past, it's no wonder that many people claim to have experienced paranormal activities along this route. Whether you're commuting or just exploring, the Northern Line holds secrets that add an intriguing layer to your journey. If you have ever travelled this line and have any spooky stories, please share them with our community. We start off between the stations of Hampstead and Golders Green, where we find North End Station, commonly referred to as Bull and Bush, which remains the most significant ghost station on the Northern Line. This station, unlike other disused stops that were closed due to dwindling passenger numbers, holds the distinction of never having opened to the public, existing as a silent, subterranean monument to failed urban planning and Cold War paranoia. The paranormal reputation of North End Station is inseparable from the nearby Old Bull and Bush pub, from which the station takes its informal name. The pub is itself a focal point for hauntings, including the ghost of Cedric, a soldier beaten to death in 1818, and a Victorian figure seen patrolling the grounds. The discovery of a skeleton surrounded by surgical equipment behind a cellar wall in the 1980s led to wild speculation that the site may have hidden Jack the Ripper. This dense layer of surface-level horror is often linked onto the abandoned tunnels beneath, with workers reporting an oppressive atmosphere and the sensation of being watched by entities that seem to belong to the 19th century history of the area. Rumours have persisted for decades that North End Station served as an emergency headquarters for London transport in the event of a nuclear detonation, with some legends even suggesting it was a secondary hideout for Winston Churchill, though historical evidence suggests his preferred paddock bunker was located at Dollis Hill. The secretive nature of the site, coupled with the platform width gap visible to modern commuters on passing trains, has created a sense of hidden history that often manifests as reports of shadowy figures and phantom footfalls among maintenance crews who occasionally visit the site. King's Cross is not exclusively a Northern Line station. The Northern Line platforms were part of the station complex on the 18th of November 1987.
Watch out, it's unstable.
That day, a fire broke out under one of the wooden escalators for the Piccadilly line. What started as a small fire quickly turned into something much worse, creating what's now called the trench effect. This is when heat and flames shoot up the escalator shaft at lightning speed. Tragically, 31 people lost their lives that night. The investigation that followed shook things up and led to big changes in fire safety rules across the entire underground system. Those old wooden escalators? Gone. Smoking? Strictly banned. Emergency procedures? Completely overhauled. Eventually the station reopened, services kicked back into gear, and trains were once again running through those Northern Line platforms below. For those who worked at King's Cross in the years following the fire, it wasn't just a piece of history, it was something they lived through. Many staff members either experienced that night firsthand, or knew people who did. Back in the early 90s, one of the night staff assigned to platforms recalled catching a whiff of smoke while he was tidying up near the lower concourse after hours. It wasn't a strong smell and didn't set off any alarms. Curious, he looked around for a source, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The smell disappeared within minutes. Over the years, various staff members have shared similar stories about strange experiences at the station, often describing them in pretty straightforward ways. People have mentioned a faint smell of something burning, a brief warmth near the escalator, and even a feeling that the place was crowded, even when it was completely empty. One engineer who worked late nights in the early 2000s recalled passing by the escalator after hours. As he walked by, he suddenly felt a surge of heat in that spot. It only lasted for a few seconds, and when he went back to check it out again, everything felt normal. He later mentioned that what really threw him off wasn't the warmth itself, but how strongly it connected to that well-known event. Even though he hadn't been working at the station back in 1987, he was well aware of its history from training and stories shared by his colleagues. King's Cross today is a bustling hub, filled with modern energy and a constant buzz of activity. During the day, it feels just like any other major London station, packed with people and noise, leaving little room for quiet moments. But once the sun sets and the crowds thin out, the vibe shifts completely. The familiar hustle and bustle fades away, but the iconic structure stands tall, holding on to its rich history. On the 14th of October 1940, air sirens sounded, and up to 600 people crammed into Balham station for shelter. A couple of hours later, a bomb hit the road above the station. This caused the road to collapse and a water main to burst. The debris and water poured down onto the station. That night, over 60 people tragically lost their lives, both on the streets and inside the station. This heartbreaking event is well documented in wartime records and is often mentioned as one of the most shocking incidents involving the underground during the Blitz. Photos taken afterward reveal buses tipped over in huge craters and roads torn apart, exposing what lies beneath. For many years, the station went about its business without any spooky stories or legends associated with it. Commuters came and went, completely oblivious to the dramatic events that had taken place during the war. But for some of the night staff, things felt a bit weird in certain areas of the station, especially around the lower levels near the main stairwell. Cleaning and maintenance workers reported feeling an eerie stillness late at night after the last train was gone. It wasn't complete silence, let's be honest. You can never really escape noise in the underground, but there was this feeling that just hung in the air. The historical context of the Blitz bombing adds an eerie atmosphere to Balham Station. With such a tragedy, it almost feels like the sadness from that time still lingers. In the southern terminus of the Northern Line's central branches, the Kennington Loop represents a unique intersection of mechanical necessity and paranormal activity. The loop is a section of track where trains turn around after discharging their final passengers. Because it is a non-passenger area, the loop is often shrouded in total darkness and is subject to the peculiar acoustics of deep tunneling. The most persistent report from the Kennington Loop involves the sequenced slamming of intercarriage doors. Drivers, who have verified that their trains are entirely empty, report hearing the distinct sound of the heavy doors between carriages opening and closing one by one, moving from the rear of the train toward the driver's cab. This auditory manifestation is frequently accompanied by a dramatic drop in temperature and a pervasive sense of dread. In the 1980s, a driver and a guard stopped in the loop at a red light, reported witnessing the doors move as if an invisible passenger were physically traversing the length of the train. Upon investigation, they confirmed the carriages were vacant. The lore of the Kennington Loop is frequently traced back to a specific fatality. It is said that in the 1950s, a man attempted to board a departing train by climbing into the gap between the carriages. He was allegedly dragged into the loop and killed, a tragedy that supposedly necessitated the introduction of inter-car barriers. However, railway historians often point out that the implementation of these barriers was actually prompted by a similar accident at Liverpool Street years later. Alternative historical candidates for the haunting include Frederick Norman, a 21-year-old worker electrocuted at Kennington in 1926. Regardless of the specific identity, the Kennington ghost is perceived by staff as a residual energy, a stuck spirit attempting to complete a journey that was violently interrupted. Scientific investigations into the loop have identified high levels of infrasound, which is known to resonate with the human eye and inner ear, causing physiological symptoms such as nausea, visual flickering, which can be interpreted as shadow people, and a generalized fight or flight panic response. The tight curvature of the Kennington tunnels may act as a natural acoustic resonator for these low-frequency waves, potentially explaining why drivers find the loop creepy, even in the absence of visual evidence. The southern branch of the Northern Line is defined by hauntings that appear to be trapped in a loop, much like the trains themselves. At Elephant and Castle, the station has decades of unexplained phenomena that has given rise to a host of ghost stories, from both staff and commuters. The most persistent reported story is of the phantom passenger, a young woman who boards northbound Northern Line trains but never alights. She is often seen entering the carriages of the last train of the night. Some passengers have even reported seeing her reflection in the glass of the carriage windows when no one is sitting in the adjacent seat. The station is also notorious for unexplained noises. Staff working after hours have reported hearing the sound of footsteps, the distinct tapping of high-heeled shoes on the tiles. These sounds are often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature and an overwhelming sense of dread. The station is also haunted by the runner, the disembodied sound of someone sprinting through the corridors after the station has closed. Some employees don't like to work alone at night, citing the unnerving feeling that they are being watched or followed by something they cannot see. The station's ghost stories have become a fixture of local folklore, passed down from one generation of staff to the next. The stories continue to captivate people, whether the tales are rooted in genuine supernatural encounters or are simply a product of the station's unique atmosphere. Maybe it's a reminder that the past is not that far away. We now move to Bank Station, serving the Northern, Central, Waterloo and City and DLR lines, is historically situated atop some of the most concentrated burial sites in the City of London. The Northern Line platforms at Bank are located in a region of the station often described as having heavy and dark vibes. The Black Nun is perhaps the most documented ghost on the London Underground. Identified as Sarah Whitehead, her story begins with her brother, Philip, or Paul, Whitehead, a junior clerk at the Bank of England. In 1811, Philip was arrested for forging a bill and was subsequently executed on January 29, 1812. The news of his execution was kept from Sarah, who eventually discovered the truth after marching to the bank and confronting staff. For the next 25 years, Sarah visited the bank daily, dressed in heavy black mourning weeds and a veil, earning her the name the Black Nun. She died around 1837 and was buried in the churchyard of St. Christopher le Stocks, which was later subsumed by the expansion of the Bank of England. Her restless spirit has been reported for over a century, wandering the corridors of Bank Station and asking commuters, "Have you seen my brother?" The construction of the Northern Line ticket hall at Bank in 1900 required the clearing of the crypt of St. Mary Woolnoth's Church. Between 7,000 and 8,000 bodies were exhumed and relocated. This mass disturbance of human remains is frequently cited by paranormal investigators as a catalyst for the station's high level of activity. Other activity reported in Bank Station include unexplained groans and wails that resonate through the tunnels, often attributed to both Sarah and the victims of the 1941 Blitz bombing at the station. A persistent, putrid odour reminiscent of an open tomb, particularly in the deep passageways. Reports of knocking on empty lift doors from the inside, long after service has ceased. Highgate Station is a complex multi-level site that bridges the operational underground with the abandoned dreams of the Northern Heights Extension project. The high-level platforms at Highgate were once part of a bustling steam railway that was meant to be integrated into the Northern Line. Following the cancellation of the project after World War II, the high-level tracks were removed and the platforms were left to be reclaimed by nature. Residents living near the Parkland Walk, the nature reserve that follows the old track bed, and hikers in the area frequently report hearing the sound of a train rushing past at high speed, despite the lack of any physical rails. These auditory hauntings are often accompanied by sightings of a Victorian gentleman waiting on the phantom platforms. The proximity of the station to Highgate Cemetery, site of the infamous 1970s Highgate vampire media circus, adds a layer of gothic dread to the station's identity. Sightings of a tall man in a top hat and a shrouded figure in the cemetery are occasionally linked to the mad old woman seen racing among the graves, whose spirit is said to occasionally wander into the station tunnels looking for her children. Highgate High-Level Station, with its fascinating history, ghostly legends, and atmospheric surroundings, serves as a testament to the ever-growing story of London's haunted transport network. South Kentish Town Station, which operated briefly from 1907 to 1924, serves as a primary example of how the Northern Line's lost spaces inspire literary and paranormal reinvention. The most famous spooky story associated with the station is the legend of a passenger who was accidentally trapped in the darkness. Shortly after closure, a train supposedly stopped at a signal near the old platform. A man named Mr. Brackett, engrossed in his newspaper, alighted from the train before realizing the station was abandoned and unlit. The story, published in the Staff magazine in 1933, claimed he was trapped for a week and survived by eating the paste off old posters. This legend was later refined by the poet John Betjeman in 1951, who renamed the passenger Basil Green. While the reality was far more mundane, a passenger did get off by mistake but was quickly rescued. The ghost of the trapped passenger remains a staple of Northern Line folklore, now institutionalized via a subterranean escape room on the site. The Northern Line's spectral history is anchored in the physical danger of its construction and the historical tragedies that occurred within its stations. Much of the Northern Line's path through the City of London was carved through ancient plague pits from the 1348 Black Death and the 1665 Great Plague. Aldgate Station, although on the Metropolitan Circle lines, the lore of the Old Lady of Aldgate, who saved an electrician from 22,000 volts, is often discussed by Northern Line staff as a shared piece of Tube Angel folklore. Old Street Station is adjacent to Bunhill Fields, a massive burial ground containing over 120,000 bodies, which was also a dumping ground for thousands of carriage loads of human bones from St. Paul's in the 1550s. This area, known as Bone Hill, is reportedly haunted by hooded phantoms and subject to mysterious handprints on station tiles. Thank you for watching this Spooky Chronicles production. Click that like button to help push the video out to other viewers. Tap subscribe to join our community. Ring the notification bell and hit that hype button so you never miss another video. And share this video with a friend who swears they don't believe in ghosts. Good night.